Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Yusuf Aram. Have you ever wondered what U.S. President-elect Donald Trump thinks of the BRICS? He's made it abundantly clear. The group is a threat to the U.S., especially the dollar's dominance. Trump recently issued a direct warning. Try to challenge the U.S. dollar and find a 100% tariff slapped on your exports. But is this an empty threat? Could it backfire as the Kremlin suggested? And where does Turkiye fit into the equation, given its strategic role in Nato and its growing ties with the BRICS? Alam Al-Husseini explains.
For U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, the BRICS bloc poses a challenge to American dominance, one he's determined to counter. He's pledged to impose 100% tariffs on its members, including U.S. allies like Egypt and the UAE, has fueled fears of a global rift, forcing nations to pick sides. Meanwhile, Ankara's invitation to join BRICS as a partner signals its deepening ties with non-Western institutions, raising questions about its balancing act between East and West. Turkey has been a cornerstone of Nato since 1952, serving as a vital bridge between Europe and Asia and a bulwark in containing the USSR during the Cold War. But now Turkey is exploring new frontiers. Under President Erdogan, the country has made strategic moves to deepen its ties with groups like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS. SCO and BRICS leaders often tout that the new alignments are part of a broader push for a multipolar world, one that is looking to provide alternatives but not to replace the West. For Turkey, strengthening ties with the East and Global South doesn't mean abandoning the West. It's about keeping a balance to protect national interests.
NATO için bedel ödeyen.
Our security expectations must be taken seriously. NATO's expansion should not ignore real-world threats, and Turkey's concerns must be addressed with concrete action, not vague promises.
Yet Turkey's relationship with the West remains complex. Disagreements over its delayed EU accession, defense procurements, and regional policies have created friction, especially when it comes to aligning on security issues within NATO. Amid these challenges, Turkey is deepening economic ties with Russia and China. The country now stands at a crossroads. Its NATO membership offers security and military cooperation, while its increasing engagements with BRICS promise valuable economic partnerships. As it continues to navigate its dual affiliations, the question remains: can it successfully balance its Western commitments with its expanding Eastern ties? Ahlam Al-Husseini, Straight Talk.
For more, joining me now from London is Maurizio Zanardi. He's a professor and a member of the UK Trade Policy Observatory at the University of Sussex. From Vienna, Harvey Dzodin, a senior fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. And from Johannesburg, Arina Muresan, a senior researcher at the Institute for Global Dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining me. Maurizio, I want to begin with you. NATO versus BRICS. Are these two groups compatible? Are they competing? Are they frenemies? Or do they just have different places in the world and we're just comparing them because they're the two premier alliances in the world?
I think it would be fair to say that we are comparing it because they are alliances, but they are very different alliances. BRICS refer more to an economic sphere than not a type of alliance for different geopolitical interests like NATO. I think that in these occasions we are talking about them because of who is going to be in the White House starting January 20th, for whom everything is a bargaining and a possible deal to be made.
Mm-hmm. Harvey, very recently, Donald Trump threatened the BRICS. He said that anything to test the dollar's dominance, and he's going to slap massive tariffs. So it does seem like at least the future president of the United States sees the BRICS as a threat.
Yeah, I think it's a compliment, in fact, to the BRICS, that the BRICS is getting better and better and more effective. We don't know how serious President Trump's threat is going to be. Of course, he's threatened your country some years ago and threatened to ruin your economy. So this could be a bargaining position. It could be a bargaining chip. But I think at bottom, it certainly is a recognition that BRICS is gaining more traction in the world and that we're getting into a more multipolar international picture. And I think Trump and many Americans don't like that.
Mhm. Arina, is the U.S. president, the U.S. economy, the U.S. dollar in a position where it could threaten the BRICS, or has the BRICS come of age enough where it can launch its own counterattack against the dollar in the U.S. economy?
So a lot of this frustration from the US is coming from the withdrawal from the dollar, and the kind of attitude towards potential de-dollarization. And there's a lot of excitement about de-dollarization, but this is still a very long and arduous process. And while some might call it de-dollarization, I would really venture to call it de-risking from a dollar. And in the immediate sense, it comes down to business. The dollar has been used extensively over decades. There is liquidity, security, reusability. And so traders want to make sure they receive the value they bargained for, really. And this is what the BRICS are trying to work on. Now, geopolitically, the dollar has been weaponized, and we've seen the dollar being used in a very unilateral way to sanction and to weaken countries. Not necessarily those who are also directly sanctioned, but others also impacted. And while, the Trump administration talks quite a bit about imposing tariffs, there is quite a lot of frustration coming to the back of this, because much of the global South, much of the developing world feels as if the Western world, in the classical Western sense, has had a lot of privilege in making rules and setting rules and not leaving a lot of opportunity for others to engage.
Maurizio, the Kremlin's saying if Donald Trump does this, it'll backfire and just accelerate the dollar's decline. Do you agree with them, or is this a very valuable weapon that he's wielding?
Well, I think that both Trump and Putin and the other heads of the BRICS countries can inflict a substantial pain, economic pain, to each other, and by so doing to the rest of the global economy. When President Trump speaks about tariffs, which according to him is one of the best, most loved word in the dictionary, he talks about 100%, 200%. In the statement he made the other day, he said, well, they will not export anymore to our beautiful country, suggesting that maybe he's happy if nothing is exported from the BRICS to the US. That will have major consequence on the US economy, on the price of imported goods from other countries, and therefore fueling inflation. And on the BRICS countries and all the rest of the world, there will be a massive scrambling for rerouting these goods to other destinations. And these countries can impose tariffs of their own. That's what we have already experienced with the first term of Trump in the White House, with a trade war. And that erects barriers across the world to everyone disadvantage. So these countries have the power to inflict a pain, but the pain to the others also come with pain on their own. Let's not also forget that Russia already has been quite isolated from the US and other countries economically wise in terms of trade relationships. And so these new threats are building on already a very fragile situation that can become even more crucial and critical in the months to come.
Harvey, should the West be afraid of a future BRICS currency, or should it embrace it? I mean, wouldn't it just make the foreign currency fluctuations, just standardize it with one currency, especially a lot of volatile currencies and economies and emerging economies in the BRICS?
I think it's such a hypothetical question at this point, because the BRICS are in no position at the moment to establish their own currency and the infrastructure that go with it. I mean, look at the euro. The euro took several decades to establish. And so BRICS is not even as together as Europe was back when they were working on establishing a common currency. So I think it's really premature to discuss this issue of a BRICS currency. And I think that it's something for a future day when President Trump probably won't be on the scene anymore. It's something to think about, but more to think about is how the BRICS countries can work together and use their own currencies at the moment to do trading with each other. And in President Trump's statement, it's not entirely clear whether he'd go after that again. As well. My guess is that he would. He wants to preserve the dollar's supremacy, but it shows weakness, not strength, by his lashing out in this statement a few days ago.
Arina, I want to ask you a little about Turkey because it's a unique country. It's a NATO member. It's been invited to join the BRICS as a partner country, hasn't given a clear answer yet, entertaining that possibility. Where do you see a country like Turkey's place going forward in the future? In NATO or in BRICS? Or in both?
This is an incredibly interesting case, the case of Turkey. And as a partner member, now it's important to remember that partner members are not full members, so they do not have the veto. They might not be able to be party to all conversations, but they have a lot more insight into the decision making of the BRICS, into the directions that they may choose, and they may even weigh in on the kind of geopolitics that might come up in the region and the world. And this is actually a fantastic opportunity for Turkey because they have insight into Europe, the Middle East, Eurasia, and to an extent, North and East Africa. And this is a strategic or geostrategic pin in the world. And this is what interests the BRICS as well about Turkey. And this brings home the point to an extent that the BRICS do not want to replace existing institutions, but they want to find a way to engage the existing economic order while crafting a more nuanced way in which others may pursue their own objectives with just as much pragmatism, and bringing in the developing world and emerging markets, which hold a lot more weight than the classical West, I suppose, in terms of population, in terms of opportunity and growth as well.
Maurizio, I'd like to hear your take on this same question as well. Where is Turkey's place in the world, at least in the future, with NATO or with the BRICS or with both?
That's a very interesting question, as the previous speaker said. I mean, it really depends. My take on the style of President Trump is that, as he says, he likes to make deals. And so any country that is in a position to offer more will have possibly a better sense of what to get out of the relation with the United States. In that sense, for Turkey, is a great opportunity because it is geographically in the middle between East and West. By being possibly part of BRICS, possibly not a fully member, but already in, they have that flexibility, that understanding of what's going on that side, but at the same time, clearly, we've quite some dialogue with the European Union. So it is a special position, and if the perception is that what matters is to make a deal, and therefore some of these statements by President-elect Trump are just meant to throw up the cards and see where it lands and who is willing to give up more or negotiate more, then that's possibly a corner where Turkey has a lot to play for and possibly strike better deals than other countries may be able to do. In that sense, maintaining a foot both in NATO and in BRICS, but also having some flexibility in each of these camps will be to the best advantage when it comes to negotiating, sitting at the table in front of President Trump.
Harvey, they say past behavior is the best way to predict future behavior. Now, the first time President Trump was in the White House, we had a lot of talk about trade wars between the U.S. and China. Do you think that he's going to have a very aggressive economic stance towards China again? Are we going to see these trade wars? And could these trade wars turn into more alliance trade wars?
The only thing that's predictable about President Trump is that he's unpredictable. So it's really hard to say what's going to happen in the future. But based on everything we can see so far, the kind of people that President Trump has nominated to be in the high offices that will advise him is that there is going to be a trade war. And I think it's a trade war that's not only designed to help the U.S. economically, it's also a trade war that's designed to put China down and, if possible, to destroy China economically. China is facing a lot of economic headwinds at the moment. And what President Trump is trying to do is to exercise maximum pressure on China and somehow to make it go away and to disappear. But that's not going to happen.
Arina, I was at the Kazan summit, the last meeting of the BRICS heads of state, and one of the things I noticed while I was there is there's a lot of countries in line to become a member, at least a partner country at the BRICS. Who do you think is next in line to become a member or a partner country in the next 1 or 2 years? Who's the BRICS interested in taking? Who do they want to see amongst themselves in their ranks?
So in the expansion discussion, what strikes me is the expectation of what the BRICS are going to do in terms of modalities. When the BRICS first expanded last year in 2023, that was actually rather unexpected because a number of analysts didn't exactly know what the modalities were going to be for coordination amongst the BRICS. And what a lot of people take for granted essentially is that the strength of BRICS is really based on the strength of each bilateral relationship. And so when you expand on the BRICS, yes, it has geopolitical ramifications, but how are you going to improve on these bilateral relations to ensure that geopolitically it's worthwhile making this kind of calculus? So in the upcoming, the decision to expand in terms of membership was an interesting one, especially because countries that were now introduced to the BRICS as of this year are now having the opportunity to veto decisions, because BRICS is a platform that it makes decisions by consensus. And even then, those consensus aren't unilaterally binding as a club. So there's immense flexibility in this. So the next category, the partnership category, we're yet to see what this means. For me, what I would hedge on is that when you look at the New Development Bank specifically, that should have been used as a greater tool to really determine what does expansion mean in terms of a very practical sense of moving forward. So I would hedge to say that over the next 2 years, this might slow down quite a bit just to understand what partnership means, what expansion means, and how they take these forward. For me, Turkey as a partner, as opposed to a full member, was an interesting choice because of the possibility that Turkey offers, but at the same time, the sensitivities around Turkey joining. As we've seen, Saudi Arabia has not yet taken up the invitation, even though they were formally invited to become a full member. And this is interesting because of their relationship with the US as well.
Mm-hmm. Maurizio, after Turkiye, which has now been invited as a partner country, do you think the BRICS can poach another member of the Western camp, maybe say a Hungary, a Poland, a Romania, and Italy, country like that? Has this broken a taboo?
I don't think we are there. At least the countries in Europe that you mentioned are all members of the European Union, and that will not go down well, I believe, with the general approach of the European Union, in the sense that although, and as we see also recently, there are some divisions in the way in which some countries approach certain topics, the main frame of the institutional situation is that the European Union is one as such in many policy dimensions. And I don't think that Brussels will accept very nicely the fact that some countries will take such a prominent roles in another bloc. But related to that is also what is that the BRICS want to accomplish in themselves. on which dimension, on which topics, because let's not forget that the countries that are full members of the BRICS are quite different from each other. You have Brazil on one side of the ocean, Russia, China, Russia involved in a military conflict with substantial restrictions on trade and investments. And then you have Brazil that is, for example, in a very different situation, and China that would like to continue to do a lot of trade with the United States, although that may not be on the card. And so here it's really an interesting experiment, and I agree with what was said before, that the position of partner in BRICS instead of full member may allow more flexibility, which I think is going to be key when President Trump is finally in the White House. And so in this sense, I think that because also of the unpredictability of what President Trump will do in the White House, we are going to see a period of a wait and see. How are possible bilateral, multilateral relationships going to be shaped and going to be affected by President Trump? Because if the power comes in numbers, in bigger groups, it's also the case, going back to what I was saying before, that Trump prefers bilaterals to multilaterals. And at that point, his perspective may be possibly to divide in order to conquer, and not having to deal with a group of countries all at once. Which in this sense, to me, made the last announcement about the going after the BRICS quite strange, taking the BRICS as a full group, possibly even giving them ideas that they didn't have. As the other speaker said, maybe they have been honored of being targeted in such a way, because I don't think it was clearly on their plans to consider introducing in the short term a common currency. If anything, maybe one of their currencies becoming more relevant than it is at the moment, but clearly not a new currency.
Harvey, I want to ask you about another Eastern alliance. Now, obviously the BRICS, an economic alliance, but Shanghai Cooperation Organization has a wider mandate, a wider mission, and geographically it's much more closer bunched together, probably a little more similar to NATO, not as obviously unified as NATO, but can the SCO become a competitor to NATO, or is the SCO an organization NATO should view as competition?
I think in the long run, maybe they should view it as competition. I mean, the SCO is adding members. There seems to be a high degree of cooperation in it. And I believe the SCO, though, goes beyond a defensive alliance. And I think that that's one of its strengths, that it can tackle a wide range of issues. The main point is that we're moving to a multipolar world. We have many more multilateral organizations now in which to operate. I think it's going to take a while for each to find its own place in this firmament, but it's clear that we're moving to more actors. It's also clear that countries like Turkiye are going to be much more important in the future in the leadership of this multipolar world.
Arina, I want to ask you about countries in the BRICS that also have really close relations with the West. For example, a UAE, in India, where Western countries have some type of levers they can pull and twist an arm. Is that something that should concern the BRICS? Are they weak links because of their dependencies or their very strong relationships?
I think I would use South Africa as such an example even. So South Africa does have a close relationship with the US, albeit a tense one. And what we've seen in the past few years is how AGOA was used as a point of leverage. And this is where, the debates to de-risk against the dollar become incredibly attractive. Because when you look at these countries, while the UAE and India might have more resilience, countries like South Africa, markets are already starting to build their risk into their risk profile, higher US tariffs, anticipated inflation, and how these kinds of international relations really impact all persons and the everyday person, their lives. So what's interesting with Trump 2.0 essentially is this heightened rhetoric around the US needing to defend itself or forced to defend itself and its allies, and emphasizing its sovereignty and reinforcing this kind of America first approach. And while you're going to see a threat, an imminent threat, or rather a very active threat, it's something that the BRICS are actively building a high resilience against. This is something that the developing world is also trying to build a resilience against, essentially.
Maurizio, Harvey, Arina, thank you for helping me unpack this battle of the blocks. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can access exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.